Breaking news, coronavirus surpasses 1 million cases worldwide, and we're taking a look at what that means for us here in the BVI.
Survey to help education continuity plan a new reality of online learning for the BVI. All this and more when 284 News returns.
Is business slow, cash flow down, hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media at cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
Welcome everybody. It is indeed Friday, April 3rd, 2020. I'm Ron Grant.
And I am Javon Wilson. Now,
Lots
Ron,
going on, yes, in today's news. But before we get into the wonderful things that's taking place, whether coronavirus related or not, the one and only Dr. Richard Georges, president of the H. Lively South Community College, who has been doing some pretty incredible things. Jovan, tell us all about what he's been up to.
Ron, listen, in the middle of all the negatives that we've been seeing saturating the world recently, I couldn't be happier to open our newscast by celebrating, like you said, one of our very own, Mr. Richard Georges, renowned writer and poet, who just won the poetry category for the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature with his book. So in other words, this is pretty much the biggest prize for Caribbean literature right now. So of course, we had to catch up with Mr. Georges himself. So let's listen in.
It is truly an immense honor to be recognized in this fashion by the OCM Bocas Prize, which is, in my estimation, one of the most desirable prizes for a Caribbean writer because of its focus on us and writers from and in the region. I am also quite happy to be on the same shortlist as one of my favorite fiction writers, Edwidge Danticat. So on all fronts, it is a humbling and really rewarding experience for me, and it is sort of a tacit endorsement of my work, and it is an encouragement to continue to push and persevere and to try to establish Virgin Islands literature in the Caribbean scene.
Huge kudos to Mr. Georges there. I mean, that book really chronicles the experience of one of our biggest natural disasters here in the BVI, Irma Maria, but it really speaks to the resilience of our BVI people, and it couldn't be more timely, especially now that we're going through a similar crisis and times of uncertainty lays ahead. So we want to say congratulations to you once again, Mr. Georges, and all the best.
Definitely one of the BVI's best and brightest. And Jovan, I actually had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Richard Georges for the Art of a Distinguished Gentleman that's going to be hitting the viewers this weekend. Wait. So you want to make sure that you check out that episode, of all the episodes, of course, but particularly that one with Dr. Georges, as he gives us a lot of wisdom. Now on to one of our top stories. Speaking of education and learning, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries, and Agriculture is conducting a survey to gather information about remote learning access in the territory of the Virgin Islands. Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, educators, students, and parents have been adjusting to a new learning style. Teachers have been consistently uploading work, and students have access to the work as well as the ability to participate, receiving feedback from teachers as well as the grades from the assignments. In speaking to a number of educators, our newsroom was able to confirm that the learning process is going very well, and a majority of students are completing the assignment. They are engaging in the content and receiving feedback from teachers. I was so happy to learn of this, Jovan, that the majority of parents themselves who have access to they too are engaged and communicating with educators regularly. Now, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries, and Agriculture, Mrs. Carolyn Stout-Igwe, said, and I quote, "We are gathering information for our continuity of education plan, and we are trying to get a better sense of remote learning access for the parents and teachers in the event that we have to make further changes for the new school term." These new changes are due to the closure of schools after Cabinet made the decision, of course, on March 17th as a measure of safety to reduce the spread of COVID-19. All public and private schools, preschools, daycare centers, and extracurricular activities have been initially closed with effect from Thursday, March 19th. until April 3rd. Now, students will then have their Easter break, which they're going into right now, beginning Monday, April 6th until Sunday, April 19th. The Ministry of Education will engage further planning for online teaching and learning in the event that mandatory closure of schools persists beyond the Easter break. Several platforms for teaching and learning will be used. These include Cisco WebEx, CXC, NoteMaster, Google Classroom, Class Dojo, and of course other community measures such as Homework Hotline, powered by YEP and CCT. Now, Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Mrs. Connie George, stated the training has been going in both public and private schools with Google Classroom for teachers and students, training in the use of Cisco WebEx platform, an online platform that can engage teachers and students with interactive classes, online lectures, vocational training, tutoring, and group projects is also taking place. This platform, working in tandem with Google Classroom, will stimulate learning and group collaboration through virtual breakthrough sessions and evaluate class effectiveness with integrated testing, polling, and reports. Once mastered, the Chief Education Officer sees this being a very effective means to successful online teaching and learning. The online classroom will require that teachers and students have access to an appropriate electronic device and internet to gather this information. The Ministry of Education has issued a parent survey. The survey has been circulated to parents via school principals. For those parents who may not yet have completed the survey, you can do so by visiting surveymonkey.com/bvihomeschool.com. Now, in addition to survey for parents, the ministry will also be launching a similar survey among teachers to ascertain their level of preparedness. Since the closure of schools, the ministry has been planning for the eventuality of schools remaining closed after the Easter break. Now, for more information during the curfew, contact the ministry at 468-9491. Jovan, we see where our education system is making adjustments as needed to make sure that our students are informed and educated despite having to be at home.
You know, it's definitely a phase of adjustment indeed.
Absolutely.
I think the world is forced to adjust, but in this case, we're very concerned about the education of our students. Now, we've seen so many steps being taken by the Ministry of Education to ensure that learning continues at home within the household. And again, I'm really happy to see that we're trying to now assess how credible that new process is with not only our students, not only our parents, but also with our teachers. I know there's a lot of ongoing training, but again, with the winds of change comes adjustment, and we must adapt in order to move forward.
And one thing, Jovan, we did put a poll on our Facebook page, so persons can feel free to participate in that poll, just to let us know whether you're a student, a parent, or educator, just to let us know your thoughts on so far how the process has been going.
And what I love about this too, I mean, we can't always look at the negatives. One of the great things coming out of this is the fact that parents now have a first-hand dose of what teachers go through on a daily basis, Monday through Fridays. So it's an opportunity for us to learn to appreciate each other and the roles we play in our children's lives a little bit more. All right, viewers, breaking news on the international scene. The World Health Organization officials are now deeply concerned about the rapid escalation of the coronavirus as global infections surpass 1 million with over 55,000 deaths worldwide. The United States with an unwelcomed distinction of being the home to the highest number of infections with an average of 1,000 deaths daily. Wow. So around here we see this pandemic really hitting a grim new level across the world. In New York City, we hear about paramedics being told that if a patient does not have a pulse, do not bring them to the hospital to be revived. And again, this is I think a sign of the dire times that we're living in, but truly a testimony of what can become our reality here in the BVI if we do not adhere, again, to social distancing and the measures in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Now, to date, we have 3 confirmed cases in the BVI, all of which were imported. But at our current way of doing things, local experts are now worried that things might get worse. Now, let's just begin with the fact that recently it was announced that 9 more tests were sent from the territory to CARPA in Trinidad and Tobago. This was announced, of course, by Minister Carvin Malone, who said we will know the results of those tests within the next 3 days. So, Ron, the dilemma we're facing at this time comes in not knowing who could have interacted with anyone who possibly or unknowingly has the virus. And this is why it is even more frightening to witness the level of closed gatherings that are still happening outside almost every essential business place in this territory ever since the curfew was relaxed yesterday. Again, viewers, we have mastered the control on the inside, but today, even with police reinforcement, we're still not playing our roles to fight the invisible enemy that is COVID-19. There is a high level of hysteria as we speak around the territory, and it really makes us question, Ron, if this 3-day curfew was well thought through.
Absolutely, Jovan. One of the things that we always dreaded going into or coming out of the curfew is exactly what we're seeing, where persons are congregating in large numbers. I think basically, to be honest with you, out of desperation and paranoia. Perhaps if our system was a little bit tweaked, or it could be revised to lengthen that out to make sure that adequate time is given. But it's definitely a scary thing where we see persons here in the Virgin Islands just literally flocking to the supermarkets, not adhering. I must give props, though, to a few of the supermarkets who really tried their best in the initial instances to make sure that the 3 to 6 feet perimeters were being adhered to, but like everything else, it is a task, of course, to be able to keep that up. So we've seen where that has fallen down as the course of the curfew and shopping of essential items have been taking place. So it's definitely something that's of huge concern, and we need persons in the Virgin Islands all across the board, supermarkets, patrons, and businesses to really understand the severity of what we're now seeing before our eyes, that we're creating a lot more chaos and a lot more vulnerability to this deadly disease.
Definitely. Well, Ron, I know that, like you said, the main concern is grabbing essentials within the allotted time, but a lot of us might be doing it at the expense of our health. I mean, the government, like you said, laid out a regime. The supermarkets have social distancing and sanitization measures in place. The police is on the ground providing some level of reinforcement, but somehow our residents are still not adhering, and it makes us question, what are we missing?
Just like the photos we're seeing right here, yeah, they're not adhering at all.
Well, Ron, there has to be a better way, that's for sure. I know many residents are calling on the government to extend the relaxed aspect of the curfew. Maybe this is something that is currently being considered due to the chaos we've been seeing over the last few days. But again, something needs to be done fast. Like Honorable Premier Foy reiterated on the last press conference, viewers, hadn't it been for the closure of borders and a mandatory curfew, scientifically, those 3 cases could have easily infected 3,000 by now. And as if we do not, so if we do not play our roles, it's going to be difficult. We have to play our roles to flatten the curve, because in 2 weeks, that number 3 could drastically change.
And we're hoping that that does not happen. Well, still ahead, ladies and gentlemen, lots happening on the scene, both regionally and internationally, with President Trump, as well as over in the U.S. Virgin Islands, following Governor Bryant's state of emergency call. This and more when 284 News returns.
Some claim that the age of a true gentleman is far behind us, but here at 284 Media, we disagree. He may appear in different guises today, but the values and ideals that make him a gent still stand. 284 Media proudly presents its newest talk show, The Art of a Distinguished Gentleman, with yours truly, Ron Grant. A show poised to help guide modern-day men into 21st century distinguished gentlemen. Don't worry, it's not all about suits and bow ties, but raw, real-life lessons that translate to grounded, community-minded, well-rounded men. The Art of a Distinguished Gentleman, a 284 Media production.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, we're following headlines in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Yesterday, President Donald Trump signed a major disaster declaration for the U.S. Virgin Islands, a move that immediately frees up federal support to supplement the territory's efforts in combating the coronavirus pandemic. Now, last week, Governor Albert Bryan told the media that his administration had written to the president seeking approval of a major disaster declaration and had expected a positive outcome sometime this week. According to a government house press release last Thursday, the declaration designates federal assistance to be used for emergency aid related to healthcare efforts of the coronavirus and peripheral issues arising from the pandemic. The federal assistance will be administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA, and will provide 75% federal funding for all islands in the territory. That is coming out of the declaration. Now, all of this follows Mr. Bryant also declaring a state of emergency, which was not recognized and approved by President Trump up until yesterday when he signed off on those declarations. Now, Governor Bryant also requested federal aid for persons and households affected by the COVID-19 outbreak, and that request for individual assistance currently is under review by the federal government, the government house said. Now, Ron, one of the positives that I really enjoy coming out of the stimulus package, the U.S. stimulus package, is what they're calling the Paycheck Protection Program. Again, that's the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, which authorizes up to $349 billion in forgivable loans to small businesses to pay their employees during the COVID-19 crisis. So essentially, Ron, what they're doing is they're making monies available to company owners, which will ensure that they remain open and can retain their employees. The loan amounts will carry a $10 million cap per business and will be forgiven as long as, one, the loan proceeds are used to cover payroll costs and mortgage interest, rent, and utility costs over an 8-week period after the loan is made, and also employee and compensation levels are maintained. Now, payroll costs are capped at $100,000 per employee on an annualized basis. Due to likely high subscription, it is anticipated that not more than 25% of the forgiven amount may be for non-payroll costs. So again, all hope is not lost for our small businesses over there in the U.S. Virgin Islands. But Ron, this brings me to a strange comment that was made recently by the leader of the opposition, Honorable Marlon Penn, who said that business owners should be penalized for terminating employees in this crisis. Now, Ron, while I fully understand the strain that is faced by the hundreds of people laid off across the territory, I personally am not sure how Honorable Penn expects a person or a business owner in this case to pay employees when, one, we can acknowledge that the borders have been closed shut. Two, there is little to no money circulating within the territory as a result of the curfew, of course. And three, most importantly, there is currently, when you think about it, no economic plan in place. We have no stimulus package to support small businesses. So our employees are expected to pay their employers are expected to pay their employees until they run bankrupt. Like, how does that work?
Jovan, I am echoing the same sentiments that you are. The honorable leader for the opposition, I think, was definitely in the right place. His heart and spirit were in the right place. But realistically, just like you mentioned, to date, the government of the Virgin Islands has not yet launched any sort of stimulus plan. We don't have here in the territory, unlike over in the U.S. Virgin Islands, an unemployment body that supports and assists persons with that regard. This is not a case with 1,000 jobs in 1,000 days. This is totally, if we were trying to employ 1,000 people before this, imagine how many we're going to be trying to employ after this. And the thought of businesses still trying to pay employees when they're not open, when they're not receiving income, I think is truly a bit barbaric.
It is, definitely is. And Ron, like you said, there's no supplemental support for us, even from the mother country, the United Kingdom, at least not so far. As a matter of fact, we're still waiting on some amount of relief post-Hurricane Irma's and Maria. So there's little to no hope. Even the governor has advised within his last release that the government has to support the country in whatever way they can. So I'm sure they're working up some sort of stimulus plan. We're just hoping that that comes sooner rather than later.
And one more point on that, in the Honorable Minister's comments, Jovan, before we go on to the next story, what he is explaining is in all accuracy really something that an elected official should be doing as a district rep, as a leader of the opposition. Take, for example, the 8th district for which he's in charge of. If members within his constituency are laid off because of COVID-19, that's where you step in as an elected official and go out and rally to each of these businesses on behalf of your residents,
Right.
not encouraging everyone and every business to still pay people despite being closed.
Yes.
This is now your duty
It's
to
just
go out
too
and
wide a
rally
statement.
and help persons to whether it is find another job or have a conversation with businesses within your jurisdiction to assist persons with the best measures possible.
Definitely. Again, we want to remind viewers that under the Labor Code, businesses do have an opportunity to lay off temporarily, and there are terms and conditions. And again, I want to use this opportunity to encourage all of our viewers, as a matter of fact, all working persons in the BVI, to review the Labor Code, see
Very
what your
important.
rights are. This is a very good time for you to do so.
And now continuing on with other news from the U.S. Virgin Islands, the VI Consortium has reported that the USVI Department of Health has provided its latest update on confirmed cases within the U.S. Virgin Islands, with St. Thomas as of Thursday having the most cases with 24. On St. Croix, the number remained at 11 and 2 on St. John. Department of Health is releasing the numbers via the Virgin Islands Territorial Emergency Management Agency and has not spread or been providing details rather on how the latest spread occurred, nor has it been including information on gender or age of the new confirmed cases. According to the latest updates, 154 cases have returned negative and there are 57 pending. Department of Health said 29 have recovered, which is absolutely great news. According to the World Health Organization, using available preliminary data, the average time from onset to clinical recovery for mild cases is approximately 2 weeks and 3 to 6 weeks for patients with severe or critical disease. The latest announcement follows the Bryan administration decision to start screening incoming passengers to the territory. Governor Albert Bryan said during a Wednesday call-in press briefing that the local screening at the airports will be conducted by public health workers assisted by the Virgin Islands National Guard. The screening will include taking the temperature of incoming passengers. The new measures intended to slow the spread of COVID-19 in the territory was to begin this past Monday, but temporarily the thermometers did not arrive in time, according to the administration. Now, the thermometers measure body temperatures by holding the device close to a person's forehead, which is considered safer for public health workers. Mr. Bryan acknowledged that the new screening comes as a new arrival in the territory have slowed to a trickle. He said, and I quote, "We don't have a lot of people flying in." He also said American has 1 flight a day and Delta canceled all flights. Now, the VI Department of Tourism Commissioner, Mr. Joseph Buchelt, who you see on the screen with Governor Bryan, said all major airlines, American Airlines, Delta Airlines, JetBlue Airways, Spirit Airlines, and United Airlines have announced cancellations and schedule reductions as is expected. The Department of Tourism first announced on Tuesday that the coronavirus health screening would take place at the Cyril E. King and Henry Rawson airports. He said, and I quote, "Some travelers may be requested to self-quarantine and or take the COVID-19 test. If arriving passengers show symptoms after being tested, including a dry cough or fever, health officials will ask that these passengers self-quarantine for 14 days. Now, unlike here in the BVI, there's currently no penalty in place over in the U.S. Virgin Islands for persons who break self-quarantine rules. Some U.S. states have put in place strict rules that come with repercussions for those who flout to the rules. Now, take, for example, in Florida, for example, Governor Ron DeSantis instructed that all persons entering the state from New York tri-state area to self-quarantine for 14 days. A violation could lead to a 60-day jail sentence and fines up to $500. Health officials will also ask that incoming visitors to the territory self-quarantine if they are traveling from one of the hotspot states like New York or other states the CDC considers hot zone. Very important measures we see here, and still ahead, 2020 hurricane productions. I know that many of you are not ready to think about it yet, but it's something that's on our radar. All this and more when 284 News returns.
It's been said, sticks and stones may break bones, but words don't hurt me. That could not be further from the truth. Everything you say and do creates an impact. Whether you're 13 or 30, 6 or 60, your actions and words carry weight. They either lift someone up or tear them down. 1 in 5 students ages 12 to 18 has been bullied during the school year. Approximately 160 teens have skipped school because of bullying. The most commonly reported types of bullying are verbal harassment, social harassment, physical bullying, and cyberbullying. Remember, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, and bullying is never okay, whether it's in a classroom or corporation. 284 Media joins the Ministry of Education of the Government of the Virgin Islands in the fight against bullying. When you see it or hear it, speak up against it. Let's end bullying.
I'll keep it short. All right, viewers, welcome back. The Colorado State University Department of Atmospheric Science is leading institution meteorology announced on Thursday, April 2nd, its extended range forecast called the Atlantic Seasonal Hurricane Activity and Landfall Probability, and has found that this year's season will be more than above normal. They said, and I quote, "We anticipate that the 2020 Atlantic Basin hurricane season will have above normal activity, current warm neutral ENSO conditions appear likely to transition to cool neutral ENSO or potentially even weak La Nina conditions by this summer and fall. Sea surface temperatures average across the tropical Atlantic are somewhere above normal." CSU said ENSO and El Nino Southern Oceanic is an irregular periodic variation in winds and sea surface temperatures over the tropical eastern Pacific Ocean, affecting the climate of much of the tropics and subtropics. The warming phase of the sea temperatures is known as El Nino and the cooling phase as La Nina. CSU said based on information it obtained through March 2020, the indication is that the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season will have activity above the 1981 to 2010 average. They said, and I quote, "We estimate that 2020 will have about 8 hurricanes, average is 6.4, 16 named storms, average is 12.1, 80 named storm days, average is 59.4, 35 hurricane days, average is 24.2, a major category 3 to 4 or 5 hurricanes, average at 2.7, and 9 major hurricanes, average at 6.2. The probability of U.S. major hurricane landfall is estimated to be about 130% of the long period average," CSU said. The latest forecast is based on a new extended range early April statistical prediction scheme that was delivered using 38 years of past data according to CSU analog. Now, Jovan, as I said, this is something that a lot of us really don't want to think of. We have enough on our plates as is trying to keep up with COVID-19, but it is very important because it is high probability that COVID-19 will transition into the hurricane season, which begins on June 1st. So this is truly something that we might be still dealing with as we approach or as we are in the hurricane season. So we could see where both situations literally will mesh, and we will have to tackle them head on. We will have to deal with a pandemic, and we are more than likely going to deal with an active hurricane season this year.
Definitely. The unfortunate thing about all of this is that we too in the BVI live within a disaster-prone region, and so as we're looking at our financial forecast for the next few months, we have to take into consideration weather forecast as well and prepare collectively for the effects of both of these seasons. Again, 9 major hurricanes coming our way. It's nothing to play around with, but again, we are a territory deeply vested in prayers, and we continue to just look forward and hope for the best in both situations.
I agree.
Viewers, that is it for today's news roundup. Be sure to follow us for daily news updates at 284media.com. You can also like us on Facebook at 284media, as well as 284BVI on Instagram, as well as Twitter. It was my pleasure. I'm Javon Wilson.
And I'm Ron Grant. We'll see you again on Monday as we deliver your daily dose of local, regional, and international content. 284 News, your source for honest and impartial news right here on 284 Media. It's Friday, everybody. I know we're caught up with a lot, but it's Friday. Happy Friday. Bye-bye.
May I assist you? Yes. You want top of power?
You want top of power?
Join the prepaid party with CCT and enjoy more affordable data plans, more top-up promotions, more savings with hero bundles, and more value for your money each and every Tuesday with Top Up Turn Up Tuesday. Visit a CCT store today or anywhere CCT Top Up is sold and top up your phone.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. You want top up or what? So you're saying I can ask this cat any question?
The cat is connected to the computer. You just type in the question, it will read his mind. There's the answer code.
You're the man! I've been looking for this for weeks.
Brilliant Hands and Minds tutoring services, one-on-one tutorials in math and English, intense homework assistance, academic enrichment, school projects, effective communication and public speaking development, sign language for adults and children on Saturdays only. Registered with the Virgin Islands High School Certificate Program, Brilliant Hands and Minds can help you too. Offering intense curriculum-based training to help you or your loved ones get their high school diploma. It's time to make your family's education a #1 priority. Hurry, space is limited. Brilliant Hands and Minds Learning Center. We are the trained education professionals.